Hello?
Good evening to you, sir.
I say, I like your new yachting blazer. Did you know I'm Britain's secret boring weapon?
You don't know what agony it's been. Yearning for you, yearning to give you my all.
But I don't want your all. I don't even want a little bit.
I will not be put off. Not after I've done for you.
Mason, no, please. Oh, your hand.
Maybe I could do something wild with a couple of creepers up his trellis.
Well, no. Here we are. Autumn's come round.
Kenneth, restrain yourself a little, please.
Oh! I'm virile. I'm butch.
Kenneth Williams' memorable performances on radio, television and film made him one of the best-loved comedians of his generation.
Good evening.
Kenneth was the funniest man I think I've ever met.
What do you want?
I'm your roommate.
Oh, no, you're not.
Come on, stop messing about.
But to many people, and certainly to Kenneth Williams himself, comedy was only a part of his extraordinary appeal.
I'm a cult figure, you see. I'm an enormous cult. I am. I'm one of the biggest cults you'll get round here, huh?
Kenneth was, in the best sense, a brilliant show-off.
I look in the mirror and think, oh, that, you know, what a dish, I think, all that.
He was a melancholic, depressed man with shot through with moments of delight.
He was a very angry, unhappy, lonely man who, out of that, found a tremendous kind of comedy.
I mean, they all think I'm the most diverting, original, brilliant, energetic creature that ever walked across a stage.
He was a man with so many facets, so many characters, and he wanted you to see them all at once, immediately. Now, 12 of them, one after the other. I mean, he would... If one said, you know, would the real Kenneth Williams stand up, I don't think he could. I don't think there really was such a person. Or if there was, I think he kept that Kenneth Williams behind closed doors.
Behind closed doors for 40 years, Kenneth Williams kept a diary. When it was published after his death in 1988, it revealed the gap between the public performer and the intense and solitary private man.
He had a feeling of exclusion from the common pursuits of others. It must have been difficult for him to have been him, I think.
Kenneth Williams' solution to the problem of being him was a great success for a very long time. He invented a comic persona that brought him the love and applause of an admiring public, but his dependency on the character he created ultimately cost him dear. From childhood, Kenneth Williams had a sense that he didn't belong. The upper-class vowels he became known for were at odds with his true origins in a working-class area of London, just north of King's Cross, where he was born in a one-room flat in 1926. The family later moved to the poorer fringes of Bloomsbury, when Kenneth's father, Charlie, a hairdresser and barber, started a business which still trades today. Kenneth and his father never got on. He was a huge disappointment to Charlie, who wanted a son as tough as he was, as Kenneth's only sister Pat revealed in a radio interview shortly before her death.
Nobody got on with Charlie Williams. He was a real old-fashioned Victorian bully. And Ken used to just look at him with utter contempt.
A man I remember once came into the shop.
Oh, I'd like a blow wave. And he said, blow? You'll get no blow waves from me. I'm not doing no blow waves. Why are you? Blooming iron. Iron off. Iron. I'm not having no irons in my shop. Get out.
From his earliest days, all his love was focused on his mother, Louis.
The real family strength was between Kenneth and his mother. And he said in his diary, I will never love anyone, never anyone as much as I love her. He just realized there would be no other important relationship in his life.
I do love Louis. She's the only person I've ever loved. By love, I mean caring so much that it's altruistic, and feeling her presence when she's not physically there, and missing her.
Louis was very fussy. If there was any mess on the floor, she said, "Look at this mess, it's disgusting." And Kenny would follow around afterward with a bit of rag and say, "Look at this mess, simply disgusting."
But there was another reason why Kenneth was always Louis's favourite, a reason that remained a family secret that no one could ever talk about. Pat was illegitimate, conceived when Louis had been engaged to a man who later abandoned her. 3 years later, Charlie stepped in and married her, but it wasn't a love match. That came when Kenneth was born.
Ken was her idol. She idolised him ever since he was a baby. You know, I suppose because he was legitimate, he was her baby boy, yeah. And everything was for Kenny. And I suppose Pat felt that she didn't belong anymore.
Then Dad would come home with his present, you see. Present for his son. Here you are, mate. And I go, "Oh, good, where's mine?" "You ain't got no present." It's for the boy. And Ken would open his parcel, see? A pair of boxing gloves. And he'd hold them out in each hand. "What am I supposed to do with these?" "Put them on your bleeding fist and have a fight." "No, thank you." And he'd just drop them in my father's lap and walk out the room.
But Kenneth's defiance of his father could only go so far. After he starred as Princess Angelica in a school play, Charlie Williams tried to push his son in a very different direction.
He said to me, "Acting is rubbish. You've got to have a trade, boy. You must have a trade." It was all din. You've got to have a trade.
And so Kenneth left school at 14 to pursue a career his father approved of, cartography. His apprenticeship was cut short, however, during the Blitz, when he was evacuated to Bicester, to the home of a bachelor veterinary surgeon. Kenneth had his first taste of educated middle-class life, and he loved it.
The house was spacious, as far as I was concerned. I'd come from very cramped quarters. And it was this spacious with four-poster beds, candelabras he gave you to light your way up to bed, and a room full of fabulous books. His library was enormous.
Kenneth immersed himself in a whole new lifestyle and returned to London with a new accent.
I think that's where he got the posh voice and all that, you know. I think he mixed with people that were well-heeled.
Bicester had a lasting impact on him in other ways.
When he was evacuated, he was on the bus somewhere, and an older man got on and put his hand on his knee, and I think it went a bit further than that. And Kenneth said that, you know, when the guy got off the bus, it was possibly the happiest days of Kenneth's life so far. And why not?
In 1944, Williams was drafted into the army, and a year later sent to the Far East to fight the Japanese, one of the more unlikely soldiers in the British Army.
I'd always had my own room, even when we were evacuated. I had my own room, you know. And suddenly, in this barrack room, I used to take the trousers down, put the pyjama bottoms on, and then do the rest. And they rumbled it in the barrack room and said, "Oh, you're frightened to show us your Willie?" And after that, you know, I became quite uninhibited after that.
Clearly not cut out to be a soldier, he soon shone off the training ground.
There was about 20 of us in a hut with double bunks, and when the lights went out, that's when Kenneth started his little acts. He used to get up with a torch and shine it on himself and start reciting silly poems and stories, and I don't know where he got these stories from. I think some of them was from his real life, actually. And he had us in absolute fits. If the chance came, he would take somebody else straight away.
Oh, good dear. For heaven's sake, man. Pull the stomach round to the front.
Kenneth was a natural performer and a perfect recruit for a new unit that would become a legend. Combined Services Entertainment. He Here, military life met show business to entertain the troops. Fellow members of the unit included comedian Stanley Baxter and film director John Schlessinger, then a conjurer.
CSE, for all of us, was our first kind of encounter, as it were, with being professional performers. And I think that Kenneth was a genuine original. I remember the voices, I think, from day one.
Just the usual fight, all the beaches, all the landing ground, nice to have a cigar.
For many, CSE was a liberating experience. It was a place where some performers could openly acknowledge their homosexuality.
There were so many like-minded people in an entertainment's unit that it was something of a revelation.
Kenneth had by now begun to keep a pocket diary. It offers a revealing glimpse of his growing unease with his sexuality.
Having a very vivid social life, I think. Met Peter in town, very camp conversation. P was looking for talent. Malaya C, I think that must be Malaya Club, getting quite gay. Now, I think that's the homosexual meaning of gay being used in 1947, although the show that Kenneth was in at the time was called Going Gay, so you can never quite tell. The last thing in the entry, and this happens a lot, this phraseology about this time, no traditional worries. I think that means no sexual contact.
He was quite troubled by his sexuality. Some of us had much greater ability to come to terms with it, I think. But he didn't.
Williams returned to London in 1947, determined to go on the stage, but not as a comic or entertainer. His ambition was to be a serious actor. For 5 years, he learned his trade in weekly repertory companies, but became frustrated by what he saw as a lack of vision in the theatre. He wanted to run his own theatre company.
His approach to theatre in those early years was curious. It was almost socialistic, you would say. But he wanted a communal theatre, and an egalitarian theatre, and almost a socialistic one, where everybody was on the same level. They were all chums. There was a bit of J.B. Priestley in this, The Good Companions and so on, too, I think.
But attempts to find financial backing failed, and the group disbanded. Bitterly disappointed, Kenneth went back to live with his parents and took refuge in his other major passion, educating himself.
He was a very serious thinker. He was very, very well informed because he read a lot. He was always interested in literature, in history, and had this amazing memory.
Kenneth claimed that every day of his life he learnt 4 new words from the dictionary and a new poem. But his theatrical and bookish pursuits only widened the rift between him and his father.
The father would say, "Who are you?" And as you come to see Kenneth, "Kenneth, one of your Ponzi friends here."
I thought it was a goat. I didn't know. Mistake!
He won roles in television dramas and feature films, although fight scenes were never quite his style. But what he really wanted was success on the stage. His big break finally came in 1954 when he was cast as the Dauphin in a West End production of George Bernard Shaw's St. Joan.
He was certainly the best Dauphin I have ever seen in many productions of St. Joan. He was rigorously inside the role. Mind you, there's an awful lot of Kenneth in the Dauphin, an awful lot of the Dauphin in Kenneth, but it was a fully thought-through performance.
St. Joan was a critical triumph for Williams and marked the turning point in his career, but perhaps not in the way he might have imagined. He was spotted by Dennis Mayne Wilson, a BBC producer, who was on the lookout for talent for a new type of radio show.
We decided with Tony
that we would like to do a situation comedy on radio without any funny voices and just character comedy without jokes or funny voices. And instead of getting different actors, we decided to get one person to do the lot. And Dennis Main Wilson came into us after one show. He said, I've just found him, a wonderful actor. He said, he's playing the Dauphin in St. Joan. So we said, well, that sounds ideal, situation comedy, you know. So he said, well, as long as he said no funny voice. He said, no. So this rather strange-looking young man came to read through. And Ken came out with this one. He said, good evening. And I thought, hello. And it's a funny voice straight away. And, of course, when he did it on the show, he got an enormous laugh. Come in.
Good evening.
And instead of having the courage to say, look, we're trying to do away with funny voices, we said, oh, we'll use it.
Radio was the ideal medium for the skill Williams had perfected since childhood, doing voices.
Ken had 4 basic voices. He had his snide voice.
Oh, no, stop messing about.
Then he had his Felix Aylmer voice.
That all your lives, your faith, your services.
Felix Aylmer was a very elderly actor at the time, very straight out. He had this wonderful plummy voice.
The picture on the front cover is of a young girl in a leopard skin bikini.
And Ken did an impression of him.
Is she in the case?
No.
What a pity.
He's Lieutenant Nigel Bowser-Smythe voice, very upper-class twit.
Sergeant Plunger?
Sir!
Get the arc light set up.
Yes, sir.
Right, chaps, cordon off the area, 200 yards.
Good evening.
Go away, please. This is not a sideshow.
Then he had his Cockney, which was a broad, I suppose, an impression of his father, I suppose.
Here you are, mate. Blabbermouth Building. There'll be 6 and 9.
I'm not paying that. It's only a mile and a half.
Yeah, but we come a long way round so I could wave to my girl.
You seem to collect voices like other people collect stamps. Do you, in fact, borrow them from people that you've met, or do you just pluck them from the air?
Oh, yes, so they are taken from people I've known, pinched, I suppose. The snide voice, that stop messing about one, I met this boy who was working the Mint, and he was describing how you were searched when you left the Mint, in case they suspected that you were taking out anything as you shouldn't be. And he described me. It had a perpetual smile on his face and said, you have to be very, very careful, because otherwise, you see, they make you take your clothes off. And so I thought it was a very good idea there.
I listen to your radio show every week. I think it's rotten. All except that bloke with the funny voice. He's a scream, isn't he? Oh, he has me in stitches. You know, there are actually people like that.
He turned out to be a grotesque, which is quite essential. Some of your great comic characters are basically grotesques. Frankie Hare was a grotesque. Tommy Cooper, in his own way, was a grotesque. And Ken had this quality, it's a quality. It's not natural. It's supernatural in a way, you know.
But William's time on the Hancock show was far from happy. He believed that Tony Hancock resented his success.
You're like all the rest. You don't like me now.
No, I don't.
Oh, come on, let's be chums. Make up.
No.
When the show transferred to television, William's role in it diminished, and he blamed Hancock, convinced he didn't want his company, either on or off the show.
Had a chat with Tony. I don't think he wants me in the setup in future. He thinks that set characters make a rut in story routine. The only one he wants back in October is Sidney James. He's mad about him, and nowadays they go everywhere together.
We were trying to get the subject matter and the characters more realistic. Less cartoony, less farcical, more character-driven. There was nothing to do with any jealousy on Tony's part, or any resentment, or any worry about Ken taking... Nothing like that at all. It was just a purely professional decision, and, in my opinion, a correct one.
Williams was by now living in the first of a succession of small Spartan flats he would always inhabit alone. He shunned close personal relationships, and the diary became his confessional and his confidant.
Really, he says, fundamentally, and he puts it in italics and underlined, diaries are about loneliness, and his certainly was. And it's having some sort of echo in your head of a voice that otherwise would have been another person's voice. If he'd been sharing his domesticity with somebody, having conversations at the end of the day, how did your day go? That would have been fine. There would have been no need for a diary. Because there was no such person, or because it was only Louis whose understanding of his feelings was necessarily terribly limited, he had to put it in writing.
Did the Hancock show from the Piccadilly? It was a general disaster. Really terrible. This team is so dreary to me now, especially James and Hancock, so listless and disinterested, and their conversation is real pleb stuff. I don't care for any of them at all.
If people had asked me, you know, in the 50s when I was working for him, who is one of the happiest people you've ever met, I would say Ken Williams, because he's always laughing, very funny man, life and soul of the party. And then 30 years later, I picked up his diaries to find out that he hated every minute of it. I mean, I've never been so astounded in my life when I read the diaries.
Yes, they are angry, they are waspish, they are bitter, but they are beautiful jobs of writing. And I think that was his release, if you like. That was where he went to himself in private and told himself the real story.
At the heart of the real story for Williams was his inability to come to terms with his homosexuality. His diaries reveal he was tormented by this throughout his life.
I feel a sexual nature which I am thoroughly ashamed and disgusted by, and it colours all my life. Everything. The sight of a navvy working in the street, stripped to the waist and gold-tanned flesh and muscles, and I am back in square one, full of guilt and shame. Even if I did it, I know I couldn't live with sex.
How is your love life? How do you rate yourself as a lover?
Oh, I don't do it. I'm not interested. I know I'm asexual. I should have been a monk. I should have been a monk. No, I'm only interested in myself, and I would regard any kind of relationship as deeply intrusive. I mean, I regard privacy as the most important thing in my life, and anything which invaded that would be a threat. So consequently, I live a life of celibacy. I'm not interested in the other.
But when he was in his early 30s, Williams did enter into a physical relationship that was the closest he came to sharing his life with another. In 1958, he met 21-year-old Australian Paul Florence. The two were close for 4 years, and after Florence returned to Australia, they visited each other and corresponded right up until Kenneth's death.
When I see your familiar handwriting, when I read lines only you can write, then I am plunged back into the past. I am that tearful, slobbering suitor of Ensley Court days, and I begin to wonder if anything really alters.
I feel that Kenneth did love me. When we first met, I was bowled over by him. There was a bond between us which was very important to him and important to me. At one point, it was even suggested that he and I shared an apartment in the early days. I think he viewed the act of sex as something that was not and could never be part of his makeup. He felt that any physical relationship, no matter what form it took, could be for him perhaps a form of destruction, but his sexual urges were the same as anybody else's.
But in future, William's relations with men were confined to brief encounters.
And so what there was instead was what he called in the diary traditional activity, which I think was just a sort of a disguised expansion of trade. Pickups of various kinds, and that was his sex life. Always with these big, strong men that he wanted. He always said he wanted strong arms to hold him. This is obviously what he'd wanted from Charlie, and emphatically never got.
William's extreme sexual repression drove him into another make-believe world.
He said, I have my own fantasies, and no human being could live up to them.
I think because his imagination had always been fantastically vivid, and because the margins of his life were populated by beautiful people like road diggers and so on, stripped to the waist, it had to be masturbation. That was his chief sexual activity throughout his life, referred to by him as the Barclays, a Barclays Bank in rhyming slang. And he was obviously a dedicated artist when in this form.
My world revolves about myself. First thing in the morning, I look in the mirror and think, oh, that, what a dish, I think, all that, this wonderful figure, I mean, and this hair, spun gold, it's been described. I've been described as, a head of spun gold. I hope they're getting it in colour.
Snow blizzard whirling outside the windows all day. I hoovered the carpet in the lounge, dressing only in bathing trunks. It was very daring, and the atmosphere was charged with sex. If anyone had walked in, they would have been irresistibly attracted.
He was tremendously narcissistic, and this could take the simplest forms, just looking in the mirror and realizing how beautiful he was. There would be a sort of transport of narcissism then that would reach to erotic heights. And I think the Barclays, the famous Barclays Bank, would follow.
While Williams could never accept his homosexuality, what he did, incredibly successfully, was exploit it in his professional life. In 1958, Williams joined the cast of the radio programme Beyond Our Ken, which later became the hit show Round the Horne. Together with Hugh Paddick, he created a legendary double act featuring the adventures of two outrageously camp chorus boys, Julian and Sandy.
Oh, hello, I'm Julian. This is my friend Sandy.
Well, what sent you trolling off round the world like you did?
Oh, it's the Call of the Sea, Mr. Horne.
Yes.
The Call of the Sea. When I get it, I can't resist it.
He can't resist it. He can't, that's that. When he gets the call, he's got to go. He's got to, haven't you, Jules?
Oh, like a shot. Like a shot, I'm on.
Yes, he's off like a shot.
So I said, well, I'm game.
And he is, Mr. Horne. Oh, no, Ducky. Oh, there's no one game here.
It was the first time that a couple of camp gentlemen had really ever been heard on radio. Ever. And we were astounded, I think, that it got past the censor, because we had a censor then, of course. But it did.
It was a sort of conspiracy, I always used to think, between the 8 million people who listened, who each would say individually, well, I understand it, but I don't think my next-door neighbour does.
Well, Mr. Horne, what brings you trolling in here?
Well, can you help me? I've erred.
Yeah, we've all erred, Ducky. I mean, it's common knowledge, isn't it, Jules?
Oh, look, will you take my case?
Well, it depends on what it is. We've got a criminal practice that takes up most of our time.
Yes, but apart from that...
With a regular audience of 8 million, Round the Horne was the most popular radio show of its day. Williams enjoyed his time on the programme, chiefly because of the show's urbane straight man, Kenneth Horne. Williams adored him.
For Kenneth Williams, Kenneth Horne was the father he never actually had. I mean, his own father was a rather gruff, homophobic, here's a pair of boxing gloves, you make a man of him. And Kenneth Horne was just a very, very dear man, a very sweet, decent chap. And I think Kenneth thought, if only he would be my father, and he just responded very much to him in that way. And I think Kenneth Williams all his life was looking for an ideal father. I think really, if you could put one line together to explain Kenneth Williams, it was Kenneth Williams in search of his father, the father he really wanted.
But with the rest of the cast, Williams' ego was all too evident, as he fought to be the centre of attention.
Egotist. Every way. I think he would have preferred to have played them all, to have done all the parts. I think he would have really... My part, everybody's part. All the women, everything. And he'd have been awfully good, I'm sure. Awfully talented.
If you met him for the first time and he would size you up, and if he thought you were somebody out of his reach or alien to him, he'd probably tell you one of his dreadful, dreadful jokes, bum jokes we used to call them. And if you were offended by it, he'd keep on and on and on until he'd hammered you into the ground. It was as if some demon had got into him sometimes.
I've been held back. I could have been a star. I could have been a star. Or I could have been somebody. I could have been somebody that could have come to my house. They're going to come up to my house and knocking on my door and making me a very nice proposition. There, it's out. It's out.
He was so suppressed that it came bursting out in comedy.
And I'm glad. I'm glad.
The other actors are very kind of laid back. Kenneth Horne was archetypally English laid back. And then you get Kenneth, this little manic, furious man.
Can we go on now?
Yeah, it's all right. What is on the phone, Mr. Horne?
And all the suppression, all the rage, all the loneliness came out in those performances, and that's why they were so mesmeric.
Williams had become a radio star, but success made little impact on the way he lived his life. He discouraged visitors to his home, and the few who were allowed into his flat were amazed by what they saw.
I've never walked in to any house which was this drab. There was nothing on the wall. There were just gray walls, these two chairs, a rug, and one solid piece of furniture, really. And that was all. It was startling in its absence of texture. There was just no color, no life in the room, no joy in the room.
His musical taste at that time was lieder. He used to listen to this very kind of esoteric lieder. Hated me using the lavatory as well. Didn't want me to do that.
I've only met, I think, one person who claimed to use it. Even his own sister, Pat, was debarred from the bathroom.
He even put plastic over the stove to keep things from penetrating. And see, I think that's rather telling. I mean, he didn't like being penetrated in any sense of the word. This was really a little cave of consciousness that he had there. I mean, nothing came in except him.
Williams spent the money success had brought him, not on himself, but on his parents, for whom he now bought a flat in Kensington. The real power in the family had shifted from Charlie to his son.
As Kenneth was getting more famous, Charlie had to toe the line. Couldn't say what he really thought, you know, because of Louis, and everything had to be just so for Kenneth.
Louis increasingly lived her life through her son and was always his most loyal fan.
Louis always was at every broadcast. She used to sit about 2 rows from the front. And it was, to my mind, a very weird sort of relationship, mother-son relationship, because all his most salacious remarks or lines in the script would always be directed straight at his mother. She just lapped it all up and probably thought he's funnier than all the rest.
In the late 50s and early 60s, Williams was in big demand. As well as radio, his name topped the bill in a string of West End revues. Revue was an ideal vehicle for Kenneth's high-camp, quick-fire style, and he became a master at controlling an audience. The revue that launched him in 1957 was written by an unknown Cambridge undergraduate.
He was absolutely perfect for the part, was the first thing. It was a rather zany revue, centred actually on a character very like him, who had the same sort of quirky separateness from everything that was going on around him, a sort of someone who stood back and sent up and commented on. So I couldn't believe when I came to the first rehearsals that there was anyone who would say exactly what, I needed. And then, as a person, he was easily the funniest person I'd ever met at the time. I just was astonished.
Orange. Pink. Maroon. Grey. Violet. Brown. Blue. Orange. Green.
What a ridiculous colour for a suit.
Lettuce green, if you don't mind.
Kenneth was in the middle of it, like a sort of malevolent elf, and he wasn't like a real person almost.
Oh, don't worry about them. They don't like my lettuce green suit, and they don't like the fact that I grew my own lettuce just from an ordinary packet of seeds.
He primped around and his little bum stuck out. And I mean, it was weird. It was a weird experience. He was hysterically funny, but like something from another planet.
The sketch-based format of revue was a perfect opportunity for Williams to win extra laughs through his own inventiveness. He became a notorious ad-libber.
A 5-minute sketch could go on for 20 minutes. And he would beat the audience into submission, I mean, and then go beyond it. So the audience began to shuffle uncomfortably because it became quite scary.
One day, he just rushed me into another room and he said, now look, you and I have got to remember that we're the ones who are going to go up there and take it. And, you know, we've got to protect ourselves. He said, what we have to do with this piffle is ad-lib it and be prepared to improvise round it.
Outrageous was how critics described Williams in review, but the impulse behind his behaviour was very serious. He now topped the bill. His reputation was on the line and he could not allow himself to fail.
Do you get on well together on stage, or do you find, Fenella, for example, that Kenneth makes things up as he goes along?
No.
Well, he's got a very inventive mind.
Yes, but I'm always cooperative, very professional. Yeah, do you mind?
What about that line you put in?
No,
The lines that you put in, if it comes to that, really...
How come you two?
Williams' reviews were attracting some of the best writing talent around, including Harold Pinter, John Mortimer, and Cambridge Footlights star Peter Cook. Many of Cook's most famous sketches were originally written for Kenneth Williams to perform.
I've got a viper in this box, you know.
Really? Good gracious me.
Oh, yes, it's not an asp.
Oh, good.
Looks rather like one, but it's not one. Oh, no, I wouldn't have an asp.
No, I suppose not.
Some people can't tell the difference between a viper and an asp. More fool them, I say.
But ironically, it was Cook who killed off Kenneth's career in revue when he began to perform the sketches himself.
My viper eats like a horse.
Like a horse, eh?
Oh, yes, yes. Yes, I'd like a horse.
By 1961, revue had a new look and a new breed of performers. Beyond the Fringe, starring Peter Cook and his Cambridge colleagues, opened in the West End and was considered so clever that nothing else could compete.
Beyond the Fringe, in a way, rubbished everything that had gone before. I mean, a lot was said in the papers about how effete the past review had been and how it wasn't relevant today. And in a way, it wasn't anymore. I mean, things change, things move on, and it was quite right that it should shift. And Kenneth certainly didn't think he fitted into that extraordinarily clever world. Although he was extraordinarily clever, ironically. He was extremely well-read and extremely knowledgeable, but he hadn't been to university, and he felt, I think, like I did, very inferior to this new breed that suddenly swamped the theatre.
Williams' niche in the West End had collapsed, but work had started to come in from a very different direction. He'd been spotted in review by producer Peter Rogers and offered a role in a new comedy film. Without thinking too much about it, Williams took it.
Great Admiral here, Great Admiral here.
Williams' performances in the Carry On films would later overshadow all his other work. Over the next 20 years, he appeared in 22 of them, more than any other actor.
What happens if anything goes wrong? We have to amputate your leg.
But his attitude to them was always ambivalent.
Your misreading of my potential is sublime in its totality.
Get him out of here, Wilkins!
Charming.
I think there was a great love-hate relationship there. I think in terms of what was good about it, they gave him security, which there's no doubt about that. The sort of regular films being made every year were bringing in regular money. And I think another plus was the fact that it was like an extended family. Some of the people on them he loved, some of the people on them he hated. But of course all of that makes life. the bad side of them was it was a lot of the sort of bums and tits jokes and sort of the very base humour that, again, Kenneth found very easy to do. But I think underneath all that, that wasn't the reason he became an actor. And I think there was a certain pull there.
At this stage, the Carry On films were no more than a lucrative sideline for Williams. Success in the theatre was still what really mattered. There had been some heavyweight roles since St. Joan. Orson Welles had cast him in his London production of Moby Dick, and he'd played opposite Alec Guinness in Hotel Paradiso. But his opportunity to show what a fine comedy actor he could be came in 1962, when playwright Peter Shaffer, who would later pen Equus and Amadeus, chose Williams to star in the second part of his double bill, The Private Ear and The Public Eye.
He loved what he called the literacy of the play, and he loved that. And he would say, I really adore that kind of writing. It's proper writing. Do you know what I mean? And his nostrils would flare. And then he had this mixture of looking comic, but in fact he wasn't being comic at all. He was being deadly serious, and he was delighted and exalted by the prospect of speaking any words and sentences that had an elegance to them, or a sheen to them, or a verbal felicity to them.
Playing opposite him was a rising young actress named Maggie Smith. She soon recognised his mastery of comic technique, and Williams became her teacher as well as her co-star.
Ken eventually one day in that awful office at the Queen's Theatre said, look, Ducky, awful day. He said, you know, you're being absolutely boring. And sort of went through it sentence by sentence and said, you must make it. You would never say a sentence like that. You just wouldn't. I mean, I was literally learning a speech and just saying it as a speech, thinking, oh, how very clever, I've learned all the words. I'd never thought of colouring things as vividly as Kenneth does.
Yes, it is immediacy in actual fact, which is the greatest kind of gift in comedy. Because to make, you know, it's what you were saying earlier on about the challenge nightly with an audience, to make it seem as though it is coming out for the first time.
Yes,
to
and
make it seem
also,
that thoughts are occurring.
Also, yes, absolutely, and that you surprise the audience an awful lot of the time.
Kenneth's relationship with Maggie Smith was more than just professional.
They were twin souls, I think, in that way. They were very alike in some ways. And I was always aware that they had this, what I can only call a kind of shining intimacy.
Would you say Kenneth had been quite a big influence on you?
An enormous influence. I mean, I pinch from him all the time.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, in black comedy, I'm doing a complete Kenneth. I mean, it's outrageous. If he hadn't seen it, he'd be livid.
This girl draws me like a magnet, and I am inextricably involved with her. It is a knot I will never want or be able to untie.
Friends like Maggie Smith were crucial to Williams and made his loneliness more bearable. More than anything, he loved family life and spent a great deal of time at the homes of fellow actors like Richard Pearson.
He was included in their families very, very much. And he loved that. He loved being part of it. He loved their children.
Williams thought so highly of marriage and the companionship it brought that he even sought it for himself.
I think he always felt that there was a domestic norm that he would like to conform to. He would like to be part of a married couple. And there were women, possibly 4 or 5 women, that he proposed a kind of celibate marriage to.
Annette Carr was to receive 3 marriage proposals over the years. The first when they appeared together in Rep.
One day, Kenneth came downstairs and told us all off because we left the sort of jelly bit under the soap in the soap dish. It was very messy. And the thing that you had to do was to bring your soap, your nail brush like that, put your soap on top of it, and then you didn't get the soap dish muggy. And so we all said, yes, Kenneth, right, Kenneth, you know. And so little after this, he suggested that I should marry him. So I said, oh, Kenneth, I don't think I could marry you. You're so fussy. Oh, he said. But he was so terribly fastidious, he would never in a way have been able to share accommodation of any kind with anybody else. And I think the fastidiousness is one of the things that contributed to the celibacy.
When I was young, we only had...
But Williams was looking for something more than a celibate marriage. It's clear from a previously unpublished diary extract that he had seriously considered adopting children and creating a family with one of the women to whom he proposed.
I said to Nora, we've both of us wasted our lives, and the days have run through our fingers like bathwater. And I went on about what we should have done 10 years ago and adopted the children and everything. And I know that fundamentally she agreed.
Meanwhile, Kenneth was having a difficult time with his own family. His parents' relationship had gone from bad to worse, and Charlie was in decline both mentally and physically.
And then the crisis came when he swallowed this stuff out of a bottle which said G's Linctus on it, which was, I don't know if it's still made, but it was a cough remedy of the time. But it turned out to be carbon tetrachloride. He does say in the diaries himself that it's mysterious how it got there.
Charlie never recovered. Kenneth was later to confide in friends that he believed his father had committed suicide.
So it's all over. The doctor told Louis his brain was damaged, that the heart was very impaired and kidneys in bad condition, that it was, in reality, a good thing, because he would have become much worse. Show went okay, audience good.
Williams now had to face up to a crisis in his career, his first West End flop. He was appearing as a Puck-like character in a Robert Bolt play, Gentle Jack, starring Edith Evans.
I remember after Gentle Jack, there was terrible booing and shouting, and she said to me as the curtain fell, "Well, I heard one bravo." And I said, "No, that was go home."
Later, Williams could joke about the experience, but at the time he was devastated by the criticism. He found he couldn't face performing without having the audience on his side, and he lost confidence in himself and in the play. In a pattern that would repeat itself, Williams fell back on what he knew would win him back the love of the audience.
The night I went, which was only about a week after it had opened, he came down this rope, and as soon as he hit the floor, he looked at the audience and went, "Hello." And of course the audience fell about laughing. And Dame Edith Evans wasn't at all amused. "Kenneth, you must stick to what's written on the page, boy." And I think the problem there for him was always the danger of, if he didn't get any laughs, what's going wrong kind of thing. He was used to laughs.
Williams' comic persona was now a means of self-protection, but his reliance on it damaged his reputation in the theatre and meant he never became the kind of performer he'd wanted to be and knew he could be. London in the mid-60s was the place to be. The capital was swinging and change was in the air, but Kenneth Williams looked unlikely to play any part in it. Conservative of dress, lifestyle and habits, he seemed a figure out of step with the times. But his outer conformity hid a fascination with the new sexual freedoms of the age.
It was swinging London. And Kenneth was always incredibly immaculately dressed. He was a very smart little chap. And he had a furled umbrella, I remember, and he was on the back of my Lambretta on the pillion. He always used to sit rather straight on the pillion. And in those times, you could go round Eros. And for some reason, I thought, I'll go round Eros, so I felt a bit high. And Kenneth suddenly started shouting, waving this umbrella, saying, where's it all happening? Where are all these old G's? Why haven't we been asked?
Williams' wish to be part of the action was answered in 1964 when he met one of the most anarchic and flamboyant figures of the age, the playwright Joe Orton, who just caused outrage with his first West End hit, entertaining Mr. Sloane.
When I was with him in life, I found myself laughing so much of the time. It was terribly funny. I mean, often it was a very impish and outrageous kind of wit.
Like Williams, Orton was gay, working class, and a prodigious diarist. Unlike Williams, Orton revelled in his sexuality. He lived with his long-term lover, Kenneth Halliwell, and sought sexual adventure at every opportunity.
The freedom of his humor, the freedom of himself, is what so appealed to Williams, who was so unfree in himself physically and intellectually. He was bound by convention and under wraps. And even if if Williams couldn't in himself be unabashed, he could be part of someone's story who was unabashed, and that was liberating.
I remember one escapade in Leicester. He revisited Leicester and said that we couldn't go to my parents' house. So he took this bloke in instead to the porch, which was the only part that remained of a derelict house. And he said that having sex in this porch was peculiarly difficult because the circumstances were very confined. And he said my bum was outside most of the time and it was freezing.
But Horne wanted his friend to do more than take vicarious pleasure in his exploits. As his diary reveals, he urged Kenneth to shed his inhibitions and become more like him.
I'm basically guilty about being homosexual, you see, he said. Then you shouldn't be, I said. Reject all the values of society and enjoy sex. When you're dead, you'll regret not having fun with your genital organs.
They always looked like two delinquent schoolboys to me. Both of them rejoicing in one another's schoolboy cleverness. And both needed success and didn't want unsuccess at any price.
Horne was determined his new friend would star in his latest play, Loot, and cast him as the worldly and brutal Inspector Truscott. Williams was thrilled to be back on the stage in a work by the country's hottest new writer. But their first and only collaboration ended in disaster. The play died a death during its provincial tour and never made it to the West End.
We were at Bournemouth and one usherette was reported as saying that it was unnecessarily filthy, as if there really was a necessary amount of filth.
People were emptying the auditorium all the time, you know, with that production, because we came under the watch committee in Manchester because we hadn't got the seal of the Lord Chamberlain, and we had policemen in the wings saying, if you say that line, the watch committee are banning that line, if you say that line, because the policeman had to say, where do you do it? Where the streets are well lit, there are no open spaces, where do you do it? 5 pregnancies in 1 week, where have you done it? And the boy had to say, on crowded dance floors during the rumba. And they said it was a definite aspersion and rudeness about the local dance halls.
The offence the play caused was not the only problem. The cast couldn't find a playing style that worked, and no one was struggling more than Kenneth Williams.
Although Kenneth was in love with the play, it seemed to me, as we proceeded with the rehearsals, that he was wrongly cast.
After the show, I felt so suicidally depressed, I just don't know what to do. The utter shambles of this production is totally unbelievable. The cast is demoralized and the script practically in rags and some of it complete nonsense. I wish I'd never set foot near the rotten mess of it all.
Horne had failed to revive Williams' stage career, but he did transform his private world. In the summer of 1966, Horne and Halliwell took Williams on holiday to a place that would change his life. Tangier, in the 1960s, was a haven for gay men, drawn there by the availability of sexual partners in a society tolerant of unconventional lifestyles.
Horne took to it like Pinocchio at the fair, you know? I mean, Horne really could get into it, loved it, was sensual, was young, muscular, worked on his body.
Typically, Williams approached the Tangier experience with more restraint. Barry Wade met him on his first trip there.
We'd wear all his full clothes, suit, tie, jacket, and sit on the beach. Completely dressed. Well, I'm not going to take my clothes off in front of the sun. But we would all go swimming, and Kenneth would have a few drinks and plonk himself into a deck chair and go to sleep. Rather like that, as you can see. And he might take a jacket off if it got too hot. That's about as far as you'd get, I think. He would complain bitterly all the time, but thoroughly enjoyed it.
But while the temptations Tangier offered unsettled him, Williams couldn't resist completely.
He came to the villa. I used to rent a villa there for 3 months. And he loved all that, to come up to the villa. A couple of parties. Complain about them, of course. I shouldn't be here. It's immoral, the whole place. Jump on the back of a bike with a Moroccan. drive off.
Eventually, he took me to a sleazy apartment house in the Medina, where a Spanish queen with an ill-fitting toupee showed us into a wretched chamber for 15 dirham. I'll have another bit of that tomorrow.
He'd disappear. Where have you been, Kenneth? Mind your business. So, you weren't expecting to get any information at all. It all happened out of sight, and then he could still say, I'm celibate, I don't do anything. So you say, yes, Kenneth.
In Tangier, Williams could skirt the fringes of a world that both repelled and fascinated him. It offered an escape from his unhappy life at home, and, as these previously unpublished photographs reveal, somewhere that he could relax and feel part of life.
On all the occasions, I fled to Morocco because of some inner despair. There wasn't one really successful visit in the sense of spiritual replenishment, but they all worked after a fashion because new rhythms were created and the pendulum must swing. It's when the pendulum is motionless or barely moving at all, that is the time of suicidal despair.
But the relationship that helped create these new rhythms was cut tragically short. On August the 9th, 1967, Kenneth Halliwell beat his lover Joe Orton's brains out with a hammer. He then took 22 sleeping tablets to kill himself. The loss of his friends confirmed for Williams the danger of following Orton's sexual creed.
There's no question about it. It is a homosexual entanglement that does destroy Joe. There's no question about that. I mean, Halliwell's jealousy, I mean, his letter at the end says the answer to this can be found in the diaries. And the diaries of Joe were entirely accounts of promiscuous sex.
No! Oh, no, please, madam, no, I cannot, not before a meal.
But one area of Williams' life was unfailingly successful: his role as a Carry On star.
S-E-T. S-E-T. Sex Enjoyment Tax.
Audiences loved their bawdy humour, and the series fast became the most successful in British cinema history. During the 1960s, Pinewood Studios were turning out up to 3 a year, most featuring Kenneth Williams.
So often what he gave in the theatre, people said, we want less of this. And with the Carry-Ons, they said, we want more of this. And the audiences liked it too. So he had a hit on his hands, and we all would rather like a hit.
Do not worry, we'll make it easy for them. They will die the death of 1,000 cats.
Oh, that's horrible.
Nonsense, child. The British are used to cats.
Do you think that this is the type of part you like acting?
Oh, I always do. It's got a touch of the sadism in it, you see, and I'm very good at all that, being a bit nasty, you know.
Yes.
Enjoy that very much.
They didn't want characters. They wanted the essence of what you had. So Kenny was like himself.
Do you think I'm an idiot?
You wouldn't dare do anything to me, and you know it.
He was very snooty, very grand, very erudite.
I'll cut his two-faced kind.
He used to mug around and joke around, and he did that in the film.
You're wasting your time. You can't do anything to frighten me.
Come on, then. Turn him over on his side.
No, I'll fly.
He brought a kind of restrained anarchy. You never quite knew what he would do next. The others, Hattie Jakes, Sid James, you knew exactly what they were going to do.
Are you all right? Am I all right? Of course I'm all right.
But you watched Kenneth because at that time, he could suddenly surprise you in a very ordinary scene.
Yes, I'm fine.
Williams gave as much a performance off the set as he did in front of the cameras.
He liked to gather people round him and tell stories. The whole cast and all the staff and even public who were watching would be waiting for him to set up his stall to tell stories. He was like the Pied Piper.
Typical of Kenneth Williams' sense of humour, the Mayoress of Wolverhampton came on the set one morning, and he was introduced to her and immediately went into a story that he does very well and tells everybody. And there is a tape of it where he's playing it with Bernard Cribbins as the Doctor, and you may like to hear it.
I must see you, Doctor. It's terribly important.
What seems to be the trouble?
Well, you see, it's this wind all the time. It's dreadful
with
with my work, you see. I'm losing jobs, you see.
What is your job?
I'm a shorthand typist.
Well, is it anything to do with diet, you suppose?
No, I eat anything. I eat all the time. Oh, you know, anything. Cornflakes and porridge.
Well, I think I'd better just examine you. And there's no sort of side effects, are there, with these?
Oh, well, the only thing is, Doctor, though there's the noise, there's no smell.
Oh,
that's
yes,
right.
yeah.
Here, you're not going to put that thing up my bum.
Well, no, I'm going to stick it up your nose, because if you think they don't smell, it's your nose wants to see into, isn't it?
That was mild.
There was little Williams wouldn't do to attract attention to himself.
This Roman tunic I'm wearing in the film is really quite attractive, in white and gold.
Just a minute. Give me a chance to look all sexy.
I continually lift it up and expose my cock and everything at the unit.
Come in.
They're all rather disgusted and laugh it off.
Evening, Cock. Thanks, Cock. I'll be ready.
But quite a number of them have remarked, "Oh, Kenny, not again. Put it away."
The restaurant was full of people, and when he came in, he used to say, "Hello, Giovanni. Nice to see you. Have you had a wank this morning?"
Charmed, I'm sure.
But the impulse behind these antics was a desperate one. He could be appalled by his own behaviour, but the reaction it generated filled an emotional gap in his life.
When I think of the shameless way I behave, anything for a cheap laugh, the dirty mimes, the dirty songs, and the obscene dialogue, and the person that I really am at home with myself, it is almost a Jekyll and Hyde existence, and the first half gives me guilt and remorse. The obvious remedy is to stop the lewd behaviour, but then I'm loath to relinquish the laughs and the crowd that gathers about me. I need them like other healthy people need the affection of a partner.
I remember people coming to pubs. I remember Ted Smith, and he used to stand at bars saying, and I told him, I said, you're not getting nothing out of me, mate. You're getting nothing.
All the comedians I've known have been deeply depressive. People manic depressive. The moments when you talk to them, you realise what a colossal amount of despair was underneath the facade which they desperately kept it at bay with. They kept it at bay with this facade. It felt their duty to channel a private misery into comedy.
I suspect he was a prisoner perpetually of the persona that he knew elicited the response of hilarity and of approval. There's something orgasmic about the effect he wanted in you, hearing the story. I mean, he wanted that above all, to build something to a great climax of crescendo of laughter and outrageousness. And then he would sort of fall silent.
I did used to get concerned about him sometimes, and I used to try to say, are you happy, and whatever. But he didn't really want to talk about that. I mean, I was having counselling at one time, and he thought that was ghastly in case it took away his creativity. He felt it would destroy something in him. He felt it would stop him being what he was.
The central relationship in his life was still with his mother, Louis. And in 1972, they moved into adjacent flats. They went almost everywhere together, took regular holidays on cruise ships, and shared a sense of humour.
She was very funny, great with the repartee, and she had wonderful sayings of her own. But she also used to borrow phrases from Kenneth, and sometimes the dialogue between them was really quite entertaining.
But their conversation could be so uninhibited that friends were left speechless.
When we first had Kenneth here with Louis, he was leaving and said, I must take her home now and rub her tits with olive oil. And we thought, He says he always talked like this to his mother. And if you said to Kenneth, really, Kenneth, you can't talk like that to your mother, Louis would interrupt and say, don't you worry about my Ken.
The impressive store of general knowledge that Williams had acquired during his drive to educate himself finally found a public outlet in 1968. He was invited to appear on Just a Minute, the radio game show in which panellists talk for 1 minute on a given subject without hesitation, deviation or repetition.
The subject is stopping hiccups. Can you tell us something about that in this game, starting now?
One of the best tips I can give you is to inhale deeply and then recite a long piece, such as the old order changes the replaced new, and God wills himself in many ways as one good custom should corrupt the world. Comfort thyself, what comfort is in me? I have lived my life, and that which I have done may he with himself may feel, but thou.
Peter Jones, the challenge.
You'd be better off with the hiccups.
So, before the programme started, Kenneth wouldn't go, "Oh, no, I don't like all this, oh, no, I'm a cult. Everybody knows, stick his bottom right out. I'm a cult, I'm a great big cult. I'm the biggest cult in the whole of the BBC. And they come and sit down. Kenneth always sat here, Freud there, Peter Jones there, myself over there. And as the programme started, and Freud might be talking in his very slow, lugubrious way, I took this dog out for a walk yesterday. Kenneth, by this time, would have his trousers rolled up and be flaunting his leg under Freud's nose and Freud's face, and then go over and nuzzle him up against his beard, stroking him, and Freud would still go on without being interrupted at all in a very slow way, looking straight ahead as though Kenneth didn't exist. Now, Kenneth, by this time, would be looking at his mother. She always sat 2 rows back in exactly the same seat.
Lovely, oh, wonderful.
And however rude he might be, everything went straight to his mother.
Ejaculating like mad there.
Keeping a stiff upper lip starting now.
I have actually tried this myself, and inevitably one comes to resemble a ventriloquist dummy. If you am
Just a Minute was more than just a game show to Williams. It was his chance to show a side of himself that he really cared about. And his anger at being contradicted was often all too real.
Well, it's the
subjects you're supposed to discuss, you great fool!
What sound as if they start off as fantasy rages end up sounding more like real rages, and those performances were quite strange sometimes because you felt, should this be being broadcast? This is too authentic to be entertainment anymore.
It is a rope.
He was giving an example of how this word...
Harbuckle is a rope. It can't be a knot. It's a rope. It's got to go up and down. A knot can't go up and down. What are you talking about? A knot's for tying, you great nit.
But in real life, Williams could be far ruder and far angrier.
I remember once a friend of mine from the country said, "Oh, Kenneth, how nice to see you. What are you doing now?" What am I doing? I happen to be appearing with Ingrid Bergman at the Cambridge Theatre. You bald-headed country bumpkin.
Even members of the public could find themselves at the receiving end of a Williams outburst. He related one such incident in a message left on a friend's answer phone.
I did that Just a Minute yesterday. Oh, it was awful. Some dreadful man came up onto the stage after and said, "Do you fulfill the strictures of Lord Reith, who said that everything should be for the greater glory of Christianity?" I said, "Oh, shut up." I said, "People like you wear me out." And he said, bless you, my son, God's bless." I said, "Don't give me that crap. I don't want to hear it. I will pray for you." I said, "Don't bother. As your presence here today has been embarrassing. You cause nothing but vexation, like so many of your religious friends."
Williams grew to hate the attention he received from the public in the street, regarding it as a painful intrusion into his privacy.
I feel the bleeding going on inside. Every day I die more consciously. The staring, the stopping in the street, the nudging of people when they recognize me, my fear of them, my hate of them, my desire to get away from their prying eyes.
Although one part of Williams shrank from public curiosity, his ego needed reassuring that he had been recognised.
To hear your lovely voice!
We were going somewhere quiet, somewhere in the Fulham Road, I think it was. Because it was quiet, he said.
Must you place a blasted loud and hardly ever think?
And it was quiet until Kenneth started.
Go on!
We got halfway through the meal. Everybody in the restaurant knew who it was.
Miss Fosdick really looks quite gay, doesn't she?
And as soon as he'd got them all in his grasp, he said, "Oh, come on, I'm fed up with this. Can't stand these people." And we left halfway through the meal.
Williams owed his high public profile to the Carry On films, but their success was trapping him in a stereotype.
His tragedy, in a way, was he was too clever for the material, and he knew he was repeating himself. He knew that he was doing really a lot of inferior stuff in among the good work.
What do you want?
The one who calls himself Dandy Desmond.
That's him.
He was insulted by every script he was sent because he thought nobody understood that he was really a much better actor.
Which one of you is looking for Big Dick?
He is.
I turned to the shooting script of the Carry On, which arrived yesterday. If anything, it is worse than the previous version. It is appalling. It lacks verbal wit, it lacks comic situation, it lacks any credible characters. It is a carry-on.
Anybody who starts with Orson Welles must have a tremendous sense of what's possible. And then to finish up in, Carry On number 42 is not really a career move upwards.
In 1971, 6 years after Loot, Williams returned to the theatre, desperate to wipe out the memory of that notorious flop and to re-establish himself on the stage. He starred with Ingrid Bergman and Joss Ackland in Shaw's Captain Brassbound's Conversion, which did good box office but had very mixed reviews. Then came a bittersweet comedy, My Fat Friend. The play opened well, and Williams' performance was much praised. He was ecstatic, as a letter he wrote at the time reveals.
The joy, the utter vindication of all the suffering and the dreary days when you see one rewarding notice which treats you seriously and talks not only about your comic persona, but about your ability to create pathos as well.
But even in a success, Williams couldn't prevent his comic persona from taking over.
The play became for him a sort of straitjacket in which he wasn't allowed to break out and be himself and be as funny as he could be. And what he wanted to do more than anything was to contact his audience.
Contacting his audience meant only one thing. Kenneth Williams, the comedy actor, became Kenneth Williams, the comic solo turn.
We'd been a duologue here, Kenneth and I, and perhaps they weren't laughing as they should do out there. Kenneth's getting very worried. So he leaves me and he dances down in this little sidling way, and I think, oh no, I know what's going to happen now. And he'd turn to the audience and say, hello, how are you? The house would go up, and he was there for about 4 minutes, little quips and jokes, laugh building. He felt better. And so back he'd come as if nothing had happened. And he'd turn to me and he'd say, your turn.
Williams eventually bowed out of the production on the grounds of ill health, causing an early closure.
From the same place?
Yeah, roughly.
Apart from a spell directing 2 of Joe Orton's plays in the early 80s, he had little contact with the theatre again. His career seemed stalled. When Round the Horne ended in 1969, the BBC had tried developing new television and radio programmes around him, but most, like the Kenneth Williams Show, were short-lived. And the high camp style he'd made his own was now being done by others, as his agent would explain.
Peter Eade telephoned. We talked about why there had been no offers of work of any kind, and he pointed out that the Grayson TV show is a complete crib of my stuff.
Cut off its tentacles. Well, the lifeguard was deaf,
And that Inman is doing the same thing on the BBC.
Yes, I'm free, Captain Peacock.
It hadn't hit me before. Of course, they found other people to do it, and cheaper people in every sense.
It's all done in the best possible taste.
He was overtaken. In fact, he was furious with Kenny. Kenny Everett sort of went a bit further than Kenneth.
I'm really wanted by big people, and so many times.
There were people that sort of overtook Kenneth in that field, and towards the middle and the end of his life, he was probably a bit old-fashioned.
I have come to apply for this job as a sports commentator. I'm walking right round the room now. I'm walking right round the room. I'm approaching the chair.
The waspishness increased. He became a little bit more difficult to be with, that people were a little bit frightened of him, that they couldn't find a vehicle for his talents.
How's that? Very good indeed, Mr. Rankin. The unfortunate part is we don't have a vacancy for a sports commentator at the moment, I'm afraid.
And I think increasingly he felt the shadows closing over him.
Oh, are you kidding?
But Williams held the shadows at bay once more. He began doing for the public what he'd been doing for years in private, making people laugh by talking about himself. The 1970s and 80s saw the heyday of the television chat show, and Williams became its king.
His way with words is legendary.
He is the most English of any of the Englishmen I've ever met so far.
A wasp with adenoids.
He's a brilliant talker, but is also unfailingly funny.
Oh, Gary, stop acting now.
Yeah, shall we bring him on now, I reckon?
Please.
The sublime Mr. Kenneth Williams.
Kenneth Williams.
Mr. Kenneth Williams.
Kenneth Williams was God's gift to the talk show host. He was a huge show-off, and he loved making people A, shocked, and B, laugh.
When I first worked with Maggie Smith, we went to Fortnum and Mason, where she was after a particular kind of bra. A very grand assistant in Fortnum's, which was heavy carpeting, beautiful, very soft pile. You hardly heard as you entered. This woman said, "Yes, I have that particular bra, ma'am." And she said it was 7 guineas. And Mag said, 7 guineas for a bra? Cheaper to have your tits off.
He got a fabulous memory for stories. He had a great gift of invention. In other words, if he didn't have a good story, he'd make one up. And thirdly, of course, and most importantly, he was the most wonderful mimic.
I remember I was in a dressing room, completely private, I thought, and a knock came at the door, and I said, "Oh, is it?" And the voice said, "Noel," and I thought it was the stage manager, and I said, "Piss off," or something. And instead of which, the door opened, and Noel Coward came in. I was sitting on this chamber pot because I had this warm water with which I was cleaning myself. And I shot up, and in shooting up, when I saw him, I upset the Po and the water. The water went all over the place. He said, "What on earth are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I was washing myself because I was told by the surgeon after my operation that I should never use toilet paper ever, but always wash it, completely wash it, you see." And he said, "Oh, my dear, I do understand. Have you read my book, Present Indicative? I discussed that very operation myself. It's a dreadful operation, piles." And I said, No. I didn't have that. I said, "No, my operation was for papilli. I had papilli, you see." And he said, "Papilli? My dear, it's an island in the South Seas." And that's what it is.
Williams didn't just tell funny stories. He sometimes used the chat show as a political platform. The idealistic young Labour voter had become a passionate and vocal right-winger, and as strike action intensified in the mid-70s, something of a union basher.
And yet they can all get worked up over a couple of pound in their pay packet or something and go on strike. Why can't, I mean, if unions really care, if they're really socialistic and say we care about our fellow man, why can't they march about something like that? Instead of another pound for themselves. Why don't do a job just for what you get? You do the job because you want to do it well.
Oh, but Kenneth, can I say I think that's crap? I mean, I'm sorry.
I've never been so insulted.
Williams' forthright outburst caused a stir, and the following week he was invited back to argue his case with a heavyweight adversary, the trade union leader Jimmy Reed. Williams couldn't resist the challenge and entered the contest determined to come out on top.
Kenneth was incredibly competitive, and he regarded anybody else on the show with him as being
somebody was about to steal his thunder, and he would do anything to put them down. And I said to Kenneth, just give me a bit of sound level. This is before the show started, to do a sound test. And he stood up and declaimed this poem to the assembled staff, and then sat down and looked challengingly at Jimmy Reed, who said, "Was that Yeats?" And Kenneth said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was, yes." And so I said then to Jimmy Reed, "Jimmy," I said, "will you give me a bit of voice total?" He said, "I've got a poem for you." And he did this extraordinary poem. And at the end of it, he turned to Kenneth, he said, "Who wrote that?" And Kenneth said, "I don't know." And Jimmy said, "I did." Now, I've never seen Kenneth as discomforted during an interview, or the interview that followed, as then. And I think that's probably the worst performance he ever did on a talk show that I did with him.
The ordinary working man's caught in the same trap, because they'll say to him, "Ask more for your house," because if you want a better one, you won't get it unless you ask more. You know what I mean? So he's caught in the same trap, isn't he? The ordinary little man who owns a house, I mean.
Not particularly.
Well, he is, if he owns...
I'm telling you. No,
well, he is. He's caught in a trap because he must, if he's going to provide...
The talk show performances mattered to Williams because he was doing little else. In 1979, he played in the last of the Carry On films, with few regrets.
I will make you love me if it's the last thing I do!
As the Carry On films reached their climax, they became almost caricatures of themselves and coarsened, and the last one, which I know Kenneth thought was appalling, was Carry On Emmanuel. He was quite embarrassed to have done it, but he did it out of loyalty to the Carry On team, Carry On Emmanuel.
The film work had dried up, the stage work had dried up, the Kenneth Williams Presents on BBC television or whatever it might be, that had kind of gone. And he had become that most forlorn of creatures. He'd become the person who existed because of game shows and talk shows.
So from an enormous potential, he had reduced himself, boxed himself into a corner. And in a way, the same thing, I think, happened with his, in a sense, much of his private life. He alienated his friends as the years went by outrageous behavior. I mean, I remember being in the sitting room and he'd kept the table on a raw for several hours, but he had to go further. And the next thing we knew, there he was, literally dropping his trousers and saying, you know, the bum, it's hanging down in pleats, and exposing it. So I think maybe in terms of relationships, he painted himself into a corner, and fewer people were phoning back.
And the one relationship that had always worked was also disintegrating, as old age took its toll on Louis.
I'm virtually a prisoner, chained to this elderly derelict, forever reminded of geriatric problems, the stained mattress, the cigarette burns on carpets and chairs, the conversational repetition.
Kenneth himself wasn't a well man. Stomach ulcers, piles, bowel disorders, all contributed to physical pain he found hard to take.
If something is misery-making, turn it, talk about it, and make it amusing, make it funny, make it creative, explain why the illness, the malaise occurs. And you can do that with comedy.
He was taking things that were personal and sometimes painful to him, you know, his ailments, his strange voice, his curious manner, and almost sending them up, or not almost, sending them up, so that he was inviting you to laugh at him while he was actually telling you something true about himself.
Mr. Williams,
you have a spastic colon. So I've come into money.
But he would pay a price for this public exposure.
Oh, the fact is, on these chat shows, I've been eating at myself for years, just living off body fat. And people say, all he does now is go on and tell those old stories we've all heard before, with his usual lavatory gags and his camp leather. Pathetic.
He felt he was excavating himself in those chat shows, just giving more chunks of himself away. And I think he felt there wasn't much left of himself.
Williams' diaries record he had mused on suicide from his earliest days, but in the last few months of his life, the idea of putting an end to his suffering began to obsess him.
What do you mean, like, say, you'd want to kill yourself or something like that?
Oh, yes, I put stuff like down about suicide and how one would go about it, what would be the best method, all that kind of thing, you know. Looking back on it, of course, it's often, you know, quite amusing.
Why do you think you want to kill yourself?
Well, one would think it at the time because of extremely low state of morale. And one actually does write something down which is practical in terms of how one thinks one should go about it.
Counted my capsules of poison, and I've got over 30, so there should be enough to kill me. Just have to work out the time and the place.
A fortnight before he died, I saw him outside Broadcasting House, and we stood on a traffic island. He was very distressed, and he looked sort of grey, and Kenneth's face in repose sometimes was an incredibly tragic face. And he would go very sallow, and I remember thinking, I was so preoccupied with my own things, and I remember thinking, oh, I should ring him. But I didn't.
On March 21st, 1988, William's diaries reveal that he attempted an overdose, but after taking 2 barbiturates, couldn't go through with it. On April 14th, he wrote what was to be his final entry in his diary.
Had meal with Lou at 5:30. Saw the news. Watched the dreary saga of murder and mayhem. By 6:30, pain in the back was pulsating as it's never done before. So this, plus the stomach trouble, combines to torture me. Oh, what's the bloody point?
The next day, Louis went into her son's flat and found him dead in his bed.
The comedy actor Kenneth Williams has died at the age of 62. He was found dead at his flat in North London this morning.
He died from an overdose of barbiturates, causing much speculation in the press. But the coroner couldn't be sure it wasn't an accident and recorded an open verdict.
I believe that he took his life. That is what I believe. I don't know that for sure, but I believe so. He could not find anything worthy in himself at all. He felt that his life was dross.
At the end of the day, he died, I think, of frustration, really. Sexual, social, theatrical, professional. He just wasn't doing what he wanted to do.
Left neatly stacked in William's bookcase was his final legacy. The 41 volumes that documented his innermost thoughts about himself and everyone who came into his orbit. Candid and uncensored.
You say you're not going to want them published after your death. I'm surprised to hear you say that. I'd have thought you might have thought you'd want your diaries published after your death.
Oh, I see. Oh, after death?
Yes.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you meant published during lifetime.
Oh, no.
Oh, after death, yes. One wouldn't mind that at all.
Wouldn't you worry about being unkind or catty?
Well, I wouldn't care at all then. One would be out of the way. I wouldn't mind it. And then saying, oh, well, he was a rotter, to say a nasty thing like that. I wouldn't mind at all if I was out of the way. That's fine.
He knew that he'd been a strange and somewhat dislocated personality all his life. Since a child, he'd known that. And he'd never managed quite to puzzle it out for himself. But I think he wanted to leave the evidence so that it was there on the table, literally on the table, for us to see and sort out.
C'est la vie, ma crêpe Suzette.
I feel sad for him that his life wasn't as happy for him as he made it for all of us. Because as soon as you saw him, as soon as you heard him, your heart lifted, you broke into a smile, and sometimes into a belly laugh. He had the gift of creating laughter, but he didn't have the gift of creating it for himself.
Par avion, peignture la glace. Fiancés ensemble, lorgnette, lingerie et de toilette, gauloise cigarette, entourage, ma crêpe Suzette.
Bye-bye, and thank you ever so much. It's been really wonderful for you to have me.